Rebuilding My Family: How We Overcame Pain and Found Happiness Together. I wasn't prepared for what happened after Daniel's birth. The feeling I had, looking at his face for the first time, was one of immense responsibility, but also of emotional turmoil I never imagined. At that moment, motherhood presented itself in a way I didn't recognize. It wasn't the image of happiness, flowers, and kisses I'd always seen in movies. It was a silent struggle, an immense exhaustion that I tried to hide. But it was there, slowly consuming me. I thought that after giving birth, things would fall into place naturally, but the opposite happened. What seemed like the beginning of a story of unconditional love turned into a sea of doubts, fears, and anxieties. Soon after Daniel's birth, the visits began, and one of them, from my sister-in-law Thaisa, deeply affected me. She seemed so distant, watching my son with an expression I couldn't understand. At first, I thought it was her grief, as she had lost a child a few months before Daniel was born. But as the days went by, Thaisa began showing signs of something more. She spoke about the baby in a strange way, saying things like, "He's not like other babies," or "There's something different about him." At first, I thought it was just exaggerated concern, but over time, I realized her words were deeply affecting me. I didn't know what to make of those words. I didn't know if I should ignore them or if I was hearing something that actually reflected a truth I didn't want to see. I began to doubt everything. Was there something wrong with Daniel? Or was my mind simply being invaded by the insecurity of being a mother? I tried to ignore it, but the discomfort wouldn't go away. Every time Thaisa appeared, her words echoed in my head. I began to question my own perception of reality. Felipe, my husband, also noticed something wasn't right. I was becoming increasingly distant, lost in my own thoughts. He tried to bring me back to reality, telling me I was overreacting, that my relationship with Thaisa shouldn't affect me so much. But no matter how much we tried to talk, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something seriously wrong with the way she looked at our son. I could no longer trust my own instincts. The pain of feeling helpless and insecure consumed my days. What should have been an experience of pure love and joy was becoming a silent torture. It was impossible to continue living like this. I couldn't allow this uncertainty to further infiltrate my relationship with Felipe, or worse, Daniel's development. I needed to do something to dispel this feeling of confusion and doubt. The only option, deep down, was to make a drastic decision. It was time to cut ties, to protect myself, my family, and most importantly, to ensure that Daniel grew up in a healthy environment. When I realized I was distancing myself from everything that mattered, I decided it was time to act. Cutting ties with Thaisa was a difficult decision, perhaps one of the most painful I've ever made. She was part of my family, someone I'd considered close to me until that moment. Walking away from her meant giving up a relationship I'd built over years, but I realized it was destroying me. I needed to protect myself, and more importantly, Daniel. He shouldn't grow up in an environment of uncertainty and anguish. At first, the idea of pushing Thaisa away seemed impossible. How could I cut someone so close to me out of my life? Someone who, even through her own grief, had always been there? But as time passed, and the turmoil within me grew, the decision seemed increasingly inevitable. I could no longer ignore how much her words and presence were affecting me. The situation became untenable, and I knew that for my family to have a chance at peace, we needed to establish boundaries. It wasn't just about my relationship with Thaisa, but about creating the ideal environment for Daniel to grow up, free from any kind of emotional toxicity. I needed to distance myself, not just from her, but from everything she represented at that moment. I felt enormous guilt for making this decision. How would everyone around me react? Was I being selfish? Was there another way to deal with this? But the truth is, the more I thought about the future, the more I realized that the only way to move forward was to take this step. It wasn't about revenge, nor was it about ignoring Thaisa's suffering. It was about emotional survival. I knew that by cutting these ties, I wouldn't just be removing someone from my life, but also freeing my mind and heart from a burden I could no longer carry. Felipe, despite his pain, understood my decision. He knew we were at a point where the only way to move forward was to take difficult actions. When I told him it was time to move on from Thaisa, he didn't hesitate. He supported me unconditionally, which was a fundamental foundation for me to move on. We knew this decision would change the course of our lives, but at the same time, there was a sense of relief. We were creating space for a new life, away from the ghosts of the past. This gave us hope that it would be possible to rebuild something healthier, more balanced, and happier for our family. We decided to move, to find a new place where we could start over. It wasn't an easy move. Nothing was simple. But as we stepped into that new house, we felt like we were starting over on safer ground. Even with the challenges ahead, we had a sense of control that we could now shape our story however we chose. Daniel was growing, and every smile from him was confirmation that we were doing the right thing. He deserved a peaceful place to grow, a place where love was the primary energy surrounding him. Adapting to the new home and the new routine wasn't quick. In fact, it was an arduous process. Even after I cut ties with Thaisa and moved, the internal issues, doubts, and feelings of loss were still very present. Guilt, especially, haunted me. I wondered if I had truly done the right thing. Should I have tried harder? Should I have given it another chance? I tried to convince myself that I had done the best for my family, but the rebuilding process, emotionally speaking, was longer and more painful than I expected. I wanted to believe I was on the right path, but often, the shadow of regret and insecurity still haunted me. Felipe was my greatest strength throughout this process. He never questioned my decision to separate from Thaisa. Although I knew he also felt the pain of loss, he was by my side, supporting me every step of the way, helping me see what truly mattered. Our focus was on Daniel, on providing him with the best possible environment to grow up healthy and happy. This focus was what kept us together, even when emotions became overwhelming. The love we shared was the fuel we needed to overcome every obstacle, no matter how difficult. Over time, the house began to come to life. Every small gesture, every touch, every kind word between Felipe and me reinforced the fact that we were creating something new, something solid. Daniel began to adapt, to smile more often, to develop healthily. The relief I felt watching him grow so happily was indescribable. I knew that by making the decision to sever those painful ties, we were offering him the opportunity to grow in an environment free from fear and insecurity. Every smile from him was confirmation that we were on the right path, and that gave me the strength to keep going. The process of rebuilding our family was difficult, but extremely rewarding. With each day, the sense of peace grew. The scars of the past began to fade, though the memory of the pain was still present. However, I knew I had made the best decision, that pain would be part of our history, but no longer the dominant force. I learned, throughout it all, that, no matter how painful, life could go on. The family I was creating, with Felipe and Daniel, was what mattered now. Time passed, and with it, my perception of what truly matters in life began to change. Those incessant questions that once consumed me about whether I had done the right thing slowly began to fade. It was as if, with each new smile from Daniel, each loving gesture from Felipe, I was finding the answers I sought. It wasn't about something grand, but about small everyday victories. Peace returned to our home, and with it, the feeling that everything had a purpose. Thaisa's departure meant not only a break with the past, but a chance to reclaim my own voice, my own space. I was no longer being shaped by others' insecurities, but beginning to build an identity for my family. And it was during this process of self-discovery that I realized how much I had underestimated my own strength. Motherhood, which had previously felt like a burden, became a journey of empowerment. I learned that to be the best mother possible for Daniel, I needed to first take care of myself, protecting myself from everything that harmed me. The bond between mother and child is complex, but above all, it needs to be based on trust, love, and freedom. I understood that to offer this to my son, I first needed to free myself from the guilt and anguish that were consuming me. The decision to cut ties was one of the greatest acts of love I could make for him. He didn't deserve to grow up in an environment of uncertainty and fear. Each passing day brought me greater clarity. I felt in control of my life again. Daniel was growing up healthy and happy, and this gave me the strength to move forward. I knew that, even if the pain of some decisions was still present, it would no longer be the dominant force in my life. What truly mattered was what I was creating there, with Felipe. The life we were building, unencumbered by fear or guilt, was genuine, true, and that, in itself, was enough. The future now seemed full of possibilities. I had freed myself from the weight of the past and was finally ready to live in the present. The biggest transformation I've experienced was within myself. I became stronger, more confident, more capable. Motherhood, which previously seemed to challenge me at every turn, became a terrain I could fully master. My relationship with Felipe also matured. We began to see each other not just as a couple, but as partners in building a healthier future. There was a deeper connection between us, a mutual understanding I hadn't realized until then. We were not just a family, but a team learning to walk side by side, free from the shadows of the past, free from the ghosts that once haunted our daily lives. As Daniel grew, he became even smarter, more curious, and more vibrant. He represented the hope that with love, dedication, and courage, we can overcome any obstacle. I looked at him and felt grateful for every small step he took. Simply seeing my son smiling and developing healthily was the greatest victory I could have achieved. He, who had been the center of my worries and anxieties, was now the source of my strength and resilience. I knew deep down that I had made the right choice. Looking back, I realized that the pain of cutting ties, though intense, was a necessary step in my evolution. Often, we're stuck in relationships that harm us out of sheer fear of change. I feared losing something valuable. I feared leaving behind a part of my history. But what I was really leaving behind was fear, insecurity, and anguish. Today, I see that the breakup was the first step toward finding my peace. The rebuilding process was long and painful, but at the same time, it taught me the true importance of emotional protection. I can't deny that the process of healing continues. Sometimes, longing for times gone by catches me off guard. But now, when I look at my life, I see that what truly matters is what I've built now. Daniel, Felipe, and I. Our new story. Yesterday's pain doesn't erase today's joy. What matters in the end is that we found the strength to start over, to move forward. Every step we take is confirmation that we made the right choice. The most important lesson I've learned from all of this is that, at many points in life, we have to make difficult choices to preserve what we love most. Motherhood isn't a fairy tale, and life doesn't always go the way we imagine. However, every decision we make, no matter how painful, can lead us to a place of healing and renewal. It's not about erasing what was, but about making the best of what we have now. And in doing so, we find true freedom. Today, I feel a deep peace within me. Not because everything is perfect, but because I know I made the decisions that allowed me to grow, evolve, and, most importantly, protect my son. The choices I made were difficult, but they created the necessary space for love to flourish. The love I feel for Daniel and Felipe is the foundation of everything. I am no longer the person who was, lost in the uncertainty and pain of the past. I am the mother who chose to fight for her happiness, for the happiness of her family. And that, to me, is all that truly matters. Sometimes life demands that we make difficult decisions, that we walk away from what harms us. But, as I've learned, these choices, though painful, are necessary for our evolution. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that with love and courage, we can overcome any obstacle. What we've experienced so far is proof of this. We are finally at peace. And looking at Daniel's face, I see that this peace was finally worth it.